See how long we can find someone fucking doing something stupid in the neighborhood, make some kind of noise, and you got something. that fucked out. Stop that. Let me do it. Or actually, fuck it, we'll just move it. Well, I found my equipment. Give me a second, guys. We'll just go over the fucking news. We'll just play the rest of the news. I want to hear what Donald Trump has to say.
Commitment to complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. He was very firm in the fact that he wants to do this. I think he might want to do this as much or even more than me, because they see a very bright future for North Korea. The sanctions will come off when we are sure that the nukes are no longer a factor. I noticed that some of the people saying that the president has agreed to meet. He has given up so much. I gave up nothing. I'm here. I haven't slept in 25 hours, but I thought it was appropriate to do because we've been negotiating for literally round the clock. Otto Warmbier is a very special person, and he will be for a long time in my life. His parents are good friends of mine. I think without Otto, this would not have happened. Otto did not die in vain. He had a lot to do with us being here today.
President has more to say on Otto Warmbier in our interview. Now, we have contrasted on this show the stark differences between a strategy of peace through strength versus a strategy of bribery and the appeasement and bowing before dictators. Now, tonight, that contrast is all too clear once again, and the similarities between former President Reagan and President Trump are now coming into the fore. The weak, the feckless leadership from Jimmy Carter that made way for Ronald Reagan, who was left to deal with a world that was in massive turmoil. The same can be said of Obama's feeble, weak, pathetic, feckless strategy of appeasement that was ushered in, gave the opportunity to usher in Donald Trump, and both Trump and Reagan had very tough talk for their international adversaries. Reagan calling the former Soviet Union an evil empire. Many in the media freaking out that the California cowboy Reagan was leading us towards a nuclear war. Let's go through history. Take a look.
They preach the supremacy of the state, declare its omnipotence over individual man, and predict its eventual domination of all peoples on the earth. They are the focus of evil in the modern world. So in your discussions of the nuclear freeze proposals, I urge you to beware the temptation of pride, the temptation of blithely declaring yourselves above it all, and label both sides equally at fault, to ignore the facts of history and the aggressive impulses of an evil empire, to simply call the arms race a giant misunderstanding, and thereby remove yourself from the struggle between right and wrong and good and evil.
Now, of course, just months ago, President Trump also engaged in tough rhetoric, even calling Kim Jong-un little rocket man. Just like Reagan, the media went into a complete meltdown, once again predicting a nuclear holocaust. Remember these remarks from President Trump.
North Korea best not make any more threats to the United States. They will be met with fire, fury, and frankly power, the likes of which this world has never seen before. Frankly, the people that were questioning that statement, was it too tough? Maybe it wasn't tough enough. They've been doing this to our country for a long time, for many years. And it's about time that somebody stuck up for the people of this country and for the people of other countries. And what they've been getting away with is a tragedy, and it can't be allowed. If anything happens to Guam, there's going to be big, big trouble in North Korea. If he does anything with respect to Guam or any place else that's an American territory or an American ally, he will truly regret it, and he will regret it fast.
Now, our next comparison surrounds military strategy that both President Trump, President Reagan, they ramped up military spending, military drills, a military presence, reaffirmed strategic commitments to shield our allies from hostile adversaries. And one more similarity comes from the two presidents' willingness to walk away from the table. And before ultimately negotiating the end of the Cold War, well, President Reagan, you remember, well, he walked away from talks with Mikhail Gorbachev in Reykjavik. And a few weeks ago, President Trump actually canceled this North Korean summit over a dispute and has frequently asserted his willingness to walk away from a bad deal. And oh yeah, a bonus, both Reagan and Trump oversaw booming economies, both implementing significant tax reform, tax cuts, removing burdensome regulation and bureaucracy they both inherited. And of course, despite what we know from history, peace through strength works. No one in the mainstream media saw this coming, but they should have. We shouldn't have been surprised. But then again, these are the same people. They were wrong about Donald Trump winning the Republican primary, laughing when he got into the race. The same people wrong about Trump defeating Hillary Clinton in the general election, and the same people who were wrong about Trump-Russia collusion and a so-called scandal, when it turns out the only one colluding with the Russians were Hillary Clinton. And of course, they're completely obsessed with anything tabloid, stormy, 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 and other ridiculous topics. Take a look.
This could be the last nail in the coffin.
Yeah.
Stormy Daniels is causing stormy weather.
Porn star Stormy Daniels claims President Trump broke the law, had her bullied.
Does Stormy Daniels have the president's number? It sure seems that way.
President Trump might have met his match with Stormy Daniels.
How is Stormy weathering this?
Stormy speaks.
It's not clear what he meant by countries. Are you shocked or surprised by this?
I'm not surprised. In one way, I'm proud. I am a proud holder.
No, we are not all created equal. At least not if you are born in, as the president put it, a whole country.
The word house instead of whole, as in house countries, not whole countries. I guess he's a holder. Is there a difference if the president said whole house?
Are they ever going to learn? Apparently not. They're so ideologically driven. Not anytime soon. Listen to how a CNN fake news panel covered Trump's historic summit.
I want to bring it back to the menu for a second, not just because I'm hungry, but because typically the White House releases these kinds of details after, for example, the French president comes to the White House or another head of state comes for a state visit. So by releasing the details of the menu, this is again legitimizing Kim Jong-un.
One particularly interesting thing about the menu is I was thinking as you were reading all that out, Don, the poor North Korean people, if they knew what is being dished out there, they can't even imagine the types of foods that you rolled off your tongue.
Right, because they just don't. It's a poor country, and because of Kim Jong-un himself and his family. Again, you're right. Beef short ribs, combination of sweet and sour crispy pork, and Yangzu fried rice, soy braised codfish. I mean, that sounds really yummy and very expensive.
Sounds yummy and expensive. That's news. Now, of course, fake news, CNN's horrible coverage. It's only the tip of the iceberg. Watch this.
A summit is not an accomplishment for the American president, Brian. It is a major accomplishment for Kim Jong-un. And in fact, the spectacle of seeing the American flags along with the DPRK flags as the backdrop for that handshake is really jarring, actually, to see, to witness. In fact, I would say it's somewhat disgusting. It is actually a debasement of the American flag. This is a despotic regime that murders its own citizens. And so we're putting him on the same stage as the American president.
I don't think we should discount the idea. It's not a coincidence that this is precisely what Putin desires.
He places an overemphasis on personal chemistry and not realizing that countries have interests. They represent their interests. Kim Jong-un, did a very good job of representing the interests of his nation and his own personal interests, and he snookered Donald Trump.
It may be okay in the real estate business, but it's odious and disgusting when he is fawning over one of the most vicious dictators on the planet.
You look at the polls, it's really interesting because the more we're talking about North Korea, the less we're talking about Russia, right? The less we're talking about issues at home.
This hatred now clearly borders on psychosis. If this were a major summit featuring Robert Mueller and his Russian witch hunt, every anchor would be here 24/7, and they'd all be present. They'd travel 50 hours in the air for that. Now, by the way, you can always count on MSNBC. They weren't here. Rachel Maddow, where were you? Chris Hayes, where were you? Joe and Mika, I guess too long on a plane for both of you. After all, it doesn't fit your false narrative, the caricature, and the lies that you manufacture single-handedly every minute of every day. And while the mainstream media was busy trashing the president and his push for peace in North Korea a few years ago, they were stepping all over themselves to praise President Obama in his horribly flawed and defunct Iranian deal, which was the dumbest deal in world history. $150 billion to radical mullahs in Iran, chanting death to America, death to Israel, burning American flags, Israeli flags. It doesn't get any dumber than this, but they all in the media loved it. Take a look.
The U.S. and world powers reaching a major agreement with Iran, blocking one of our biggest rivals from developing a nuclear weapon.
The president is about to deliver a statement on this historic nuclear deal reached with Iran overnight. This agreement is supposed to freeze that country's pursuit of a nuclear weapon.
Has the U.S. and its allies successfully blocked Iran from making a nuclear bomb, at least for now?
But tonight, the United States could be entering a new era in its relationship with Iran.
I think it begins to change the dynamics of a tense relationship of 36 years between Washington and Tehran. I think the deal provides more than the United States anticipated, and I think it could help prevent an arms race in the region that would be detrimental to not just the Middle East, but to the whole world.
Seems that they all had that Chris Matthews thrill running up and down their leg, but obviously this media isn't capable of covering this president, President Trump, in any fair, unbiased way. And in that sense, his success is their failure. They would have to admit they're wrong. And in doing so, by the way, that means if they're correct, the world would be less safe. President successful? How can they not see how completely dishonest and agenda-driven they really are? Now, so far, betting against President Trump has not been working out particularly well for any of them. They keep getting pretty much everything wrong. So maybe it's time for them to start asking themselves, what is in the best interest of the people of the United States? And maybe they should just stop pushing their radical leftist agenda. The media said Trump would be an unmitigated disaster. In 500 days, what's happened? He's tallied a tremendous record of accomplishment. Look at your screen. As we pointed out many times, this is especially true on the economy, breaking unemployment records across the board, generating wealth like never before. And that's why tonight we are hopeful that progress will happen on the Korean Peninsula. It's good for everybody. It's good for the world. In fact, progress must happen on the Korean Peninsula. Look at the map right there on your screen. See the city of Seoul, South Korea, its population nearly tops 10 million people, making it more populous than even New York City. And Seoul is only located 35 miles away from the DMZ, well within striking distance of Kim Jong-un, and only miles away from tens of thousands of American soldiers who are tasked with protecting South Korea. One nuclear weapon could wipe it off the face of the planet. And tonight, everyone in the world should be rooting for the president's success here in the region. It's a worthy cause, a necessary cause, and millions of lives literally are at stake. And a few hours ago, I had the opportunity to sit down with the president. Here's part one. We'll show you the entire interview. Part one of my interview with President Trump right after this historic meeting. Mr. President, great to see you.
Thank you very much.
Historic day. I think most people like me want to know what was going on in that room one-on-one.
Well, the big thing is this is now my 25th hour of being up and negotiating, and we've been negotiating very hard.
This is about the complete, verifiable, irreversible denuclearization of the entire peninsula.
So without that, we could not have had a deal. I mean, the one thing up front, we want to denuke the entire peninsula. We want to denuke that whole situation. That is a hotbed. And you know what's been happening for years, and nobody did anything about it. And you have to. We have no choice. We had to. And the relationship was really good. It built. And I talked about early on in the relationship and the feeling. Well, we had a very good feel right from the beginning. And we were able to get something very important done. And actually some things happened after that was signed, Sean, where we're getting rid of certain missile research areas, certain missile testing sites. They're getting rid of a lot.
You know, in the lead up to this, and this was pretty amazing because obviously I'm a pretty strong critic of our news media in the country, but a lot had happened. He dismantled a nuclear test site. He crossed over the DMZ. 3 hostages were released. The missiles stopped being fired. He was willing. You wouldn't have come here if he was not willing to talk about denuclearization.
That's right.
So all of that happened before you walked in, and I don't remember that you sent cargo planes of cash or gave anything really before the lead up. Why do you think he's interested in doing this after spending that time with him?
Well, it's sort of interesting because I noticed some of the press, and I'm not even knocking him because honestly they're treating me very good on this subject. What's to treat badly? But some of the press would say he's meeting with them and therefore he has a major loss. I said, since when? And you know, others wanted to, it never worked out. It probably never could have worked out. But we really have gotten a lot. You haven't seen missiles going up in 7 or 8 months. You haven't seen research. You haven't seen nuclear tests, very importantly. Japan is very happy because they were being encircled. I mean, there was a period of time when they were going right over the middle of Japan. And we got our hostages back. And you're right, we didn't pay for that. But I think, I don't say that in a braggadocious way at all because he did such a smart thing, because that was such a good thing to do. And I feel so badly about Otto Warmbier. That was the one thing. And Otto did not die in vain. I actually believe, and I've gotten very friendly with Otto's parents. They're incredible people, devastated, as they, you know, as you would think, great parents. He was a great young man. But I think without Otto, this whole thing wouldn't have happened, because it crystallized when he came back in the condition. It crystallized so much to so many people, maybe even to the other side, frankly. But I think that Otto truly did not die in vain.
Yeah, I've known you for a lot of years, and I think one trait that I could say is brutal honesty. In the room, alone, and then the subsequent talks with your team and their team. How honest, how brutal, what was said? Try and bring people into the room.
So we got along very well. We got along from the beginning. We started off, he and myself and 2 interpreters, and from the beginning we got along. And you know, I made the statement, and I've said it before, I've said it about a lot of different kinds of relationships. You can almost tell right at the beginning.
Did you tell at the beginning? What was that first minute?
No, I felt very good at the beginning, and we, you know, I talked about we have to denuke. This country has to be denuked, and he understood that. He fully understood it. He didn't fight it. And we're doing some great things, and for his country, and South Korea is going to be involved very much in helping, and Japan is going to be involved, and President Xi of China has been, you know, really terrific on the border. I think less so the last couple of months, unfortunately.
Was that a big part? Because your meetings, when you met with the president of China, was scheduled, if I recall, for like 15 minutes. Didn't some go on for 4 hours?
That's right. Well, we actually met at Mar-a-Lago. He wanted to be at Mar-a-Lago, and we had a 15-minute meeting scheduled. When he comes in, we were going to go into breakout rooms where we had many people waiting for us, and it ended up lasting 4 hours. The 15 minutes, President of China, great guy, it ended up lasting for 4 hours. We just got along, and we have gotten along. I mean, I wanted to treat us better in trade. That's my only problem. You know, they've been killing us.
Didn't they make concessions on intellectual property?
Well, they want to do things. It's a tough thing. You know, they're doing so well. They've made so much progress against us for so many years. It's awfully tough for them to bring it back. And we'll see how that all works out. We're gonna do something. Definitely, we're gonna do something. You know, they offered us $80 billion in purchases of agricultural products, but it's just not enough for what we're talking about. It's $80 billion. I never thought I'd turn down $80 billion, but we have to do something with intellectual property. We have to do something just generally on trade. Last year we lost $500 billion with China. We can't do that anymore.
All right, when we come back more, my one-on-one interview with President Trump, stay right here as we continue from Singapore tonight.
President's adding drug cartels to the list of terrorist organizations.
So you want a Sicario?
No rules this time.
Adios.
And this girl was witness to the mission.
You gotta get rid of her. I can't do that. You have no reason to trust me. But trusting me is how you're gonna survive. Good luck. Look, there's somebody on this side of the border.
Sicario, Day of the Soldado, rated R.
This is where life expresses itself as an endless flow of energy. Are you ready? Atlantis, Bahamas at heart.
Book by June 18th for our best summer rates at 1-800-ATLANTIS or AtlantisBahamas.com.
Since my stroke, he hasn't left my side.
With the right steps, 80% of recurrent ischemic strokes could be prevented. A Bayer aspirin regimen is one step to help prevent another stroke.
So I'm doing all I can to stay in his life.
Be sure to talk to your doctor before you begin an aspirin regimen.
Meet the all-new SimpliSafe home security system. Engineered with a single focus to protect. Built for the unexpected. Power outages, downed Wi-Fi, cut landlines, hammers, bats, and everything in between. Sensors so small they're practically invisible. Designed to disappear into your home and blanket it with protection. So precise, they can tell the difference between the family pet and an intruder. More than easy to use, downright delightful. With gentle reminders when a window is left open, and urgency in moments of crisis. All at prices that are fair and honest. We're 10 years in, protecting over 2 million Americans. This is SimpliSafe. Home security done right.
My daughter came into the bedroom and she said, "Dad, there's a man in black tactical gear shooting up the Baptist church." Every one of those shots to me represented one of my neighbors, one of my friends. And I ran as fast as I could. Immediately, he came out of the church shooting at me. He hit the truck in front of me, he hit the car behind me, hit the house behind me. And I hit him. He had an AR-15, but so did I. And it's not the gun, it's the heart. It's a matter of the heart. I'm not the bravest man in the world or anything, but I was here. I was here, and I could do something. And I had to do something.
I understand that.
This is the era of digital possibility, when every connection is an opportunity to do more. To build a network of human progress, where enterprise, data, collaboration, and the cloud communicate and live. From IT leaders and business owners to educators and healthcare providers, there's a shared belief that technology brings opportunity. Where every fiber-lit building, enterprise, and city we connect lays the foundation to our digital economy and the groundwork for a new future. That's why we're committed to building the digital infrastructure that makes possibility achievable. Join us as we turn the promise of technology into digital progress. Together.
What do you mean, come?
Spectrum Enterprise.
Spectrum, sorry, I haven't been fun of that. I call it sperm vectors.
Welcome back to Hannity. We're live in Singapore as we continue now with part 2 of my interview with President Trump, where I asked him how his rhetoric with Kim Jong-un evolved and how important a role that rhetoric played. Take a look.
Let's go to the beginning. There are a lot of people, critics, quickly saying, when you said Little Rocket Man, or Fire and Fury, or, when he said, "Oh, I've got a red button on my desk," he said, "Well, mine's bigger and it works better than yours." How did it evolve from that to this? Because he did say at the very beginning, we're going to basically start over, but that has been building behind the scenes.
Well, I think without the rhetoric, we wouldn't have been here. I really believe that, we did sanctions and all of the things that you would do, but I think without the rhetoric, other administrations, I don't want to get specific on that, but they had a policy of silence. If they said something very bad, very threatening and horrible, just don't answer. That's not the answer. That's not what you have to do. So I think the rhetoric, I hated to do it, sometimes I felt foolish doing it. But we had no choice.
So
And-
strategically you were doing it.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I think he gained respect. You know, he's a strong guy. Hey, people were saying, what's he like? He's got a very good personality. He's funny, and he's very, very smart. He's a great negotiator. And he's a very strategic kind of a guy.
One of
Very
the
impressive.
points that I think surprised everybody, and I think every American should be very happy about this, is the Korean War, which has gone on for so long. But more importantly, there are still American remains there,
That's right.
and they will be repatriated.
The remains are coming back.
Yeah.
And we got that at the end. In fact, we have some things that you don't even have in the report. We
What
put
can you
out
tell
the
us?
report.
Anything you can tell us?
What we signed. Yeah, missile sites that they use for the launching of missiles and missile research areas. That's going to be gone. We made a lot of progress, tremendous amount of progress. So one of the things that I'm very happy about, we're not going to play the war games anymore, which you know how expensive that is. We'll find these massive bombers in for practice from Guam. I said, how far is Guam? 6.5 hours, sir. I said, that's a long way for a big bomber times, 20.
Yeah.
And lots of other planes coming in. So we're not going to be doing the war games as long as we're negotiating in good faith. So that's good for a number of reasons, in addition to which we save a tremendous amount of money. You know, those things, they cost. I hate to sound like a pure businessman, but I kept saying, what's this costing? I would look at them coming in from the sea and bombs exploding. I said, what does this cost? I don't even want to tell you, but it's a lot. So we're not going to be doing that as long as we're negotiating in good faith, which I think we will be.
You managed expectations, I think, pretty well. You didn't think coming in here you were going to sign an agreement, and you said maybe it takes 2, 3, 4, 5 meetings. But you were open to going as fast or slow as you wanted.
We get along better than I would have assumed right from the beginning. We got a lot more done today than I ever thought possible. And he's going back. He's now headed back. And I think he's going back to get this done. He wants to get it done. You know, you hear the whole thing about his father and other administrations or his grandfather. The fact is that he brings that up. But they weren't dealing with me. They were dealing with different people. And
What
they
did
never
you
got
say
very
was the
far. You know,
difference?
nobody's ever come close.
Did you
to
talk
this.
about the difference between past administrations and yours?
Yes, but I can't say that because I don't want to be the one saying it. At some point, I'm sure he'll say it.
Yeah.
But they never got it done. And they were never this close either. I mean, it was never to a point where they were like we are.
Is there a history lesson to learn here? I think in one sense we could talk about past administrations. Reagan, evil empire, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. His own advisors wanted to take those words out of that speech. And you compare Bill Clinton gave Kim Jong-un's father $3 billion in energy subsidies.
Tremendous amount of money.
The mullahs in Iran, you have said the worst deal in the history of mankind. That's
Probably the
it's a
worst deal I've ever seen. Worse than NAFTA, and I think NAFTA is pretty bad. Worse than the WTO, the World Trade Organization, which frankly built China. In addition to the money that we gave them all the time, you know, I mean, these were terrible deals. But I would say that the Iran deal was one of the worst I've ever seen. I will say, speaking of the Iran deal, since we got out of that deal, and we could do it very easily because they never had it approved by Congress. It was just
This must be approved by Congress.
I wanted to be approved by Congress because otherwise it really doesn't mean very much. I would think anybody would want it approved by Congress. But since we took out of that deal, we got out of that deal, I think Iran is a much different place. I don't think they're looking so much to the Mediterranean and Syria and Yemen. They're starting to pull people out of Yemen. They're starting to pull people out of Syria. It's a whole different thing. Now, I did it for nuclear. But one of the side benefits is you take a look, a serious look, and Iran is not the country that it was 3 or 4 months ago when they were much more emboldened.
Well, certainly sanctions played a big part.
Big part.
The strike forces that you sent into the region of the country.
And I think at a certain point, honestly, I know the Iranian people, I know many people from Iran, these are great people. I really believe at some point they're going to come back and want to negotiate a deal.
All right, when we come back, much more to get to with President Trump, and let not your heart be troubled. And we got some deep state breaking news, a showdown between the DOJ and Republicans that are trying to do their constitutional oversight. This is getting interesting in the lead up to the IG report release on Thursday. We'll have the latest.
I'll shoot you an estimate as soon as I get back to the office.
Hey, I can help you do that right now. That's right.
Right.
Yep, I'm the all-in-one management software built for small business. That's right.
Help me with scheduling?
Sure thing. Up top. That's right.
Payments,
That's right.
promotions,
That's right.
email marketing,
Almost there. Hold on. Wait for it. That's right.
manage my customer list.
Can do, will do. That's right.
Post on social media?
Hashtag I Thrive, my friend. Get started for free at thrive.com.
In an era of online retail where everything is just a few clicks away, buying a car should be no different. That's why at Carvana, you can buy a car 100% online. We made it easy to browse, view, and buy from over 10,000 cars. You can even trade in your old car, all while binge watching your favorite TV show. Afterwards, we'll deliver your car to you. Or you can pick it up from one of our car vending machines. Either way, your car comes with a 7-day return policy. So grab a seat, relax in your comfy pants, and enjoy the new way to buy a car at Carvana.
With only a kite, a house key, and wet hamstring, Benjamin Franklin captured lightning in a bottle. Over 260 years later, with a little resourcefulness, ingenuity, and grit, we're not only capturing energy from the sun and wind, we're storing it. As the nation's leader in energy storage, we're ensuring Americans have the energy they need whenever they need it. This is our era. This is America's energy era. NextEra Energy.
What is love? 2 hearts, 1 soul, a kiss, a hug, a laugh. It's passion. It's freedom. It's mystery. It's the journey and the destination. It's vows made and promises kept. It's a feeling, a need, no rules. Limited, all unlimited. Feed your hunger, quench your thirst, live your dream. Indulged, reborn. What is love? Love is all you need. Call 1-800-SANDALS.
We use Angie's List because we can always find great local pros.
For any type of home project.
With a free dark web triple scan at Experian.com/triple.
I feel a great deal of urgency.
I think keep going and make a difference.
At some point, we're going to be able to beat ALS.
Because life
Don't worry, I'll rechange the title.
amazing.
So I am hoping
Something
for
screwed
a
up
cure
while I was
that
typing
will get
it.
to be a reality.
It's supposed to be Lizard Crew, but something screwed up.
The ADT yard sign stands watch over your home and family with 140 years of tested, trusted, 24/7 protection. Now get our lowest rate for fast response monitoring at just $28.99 a month, about $1 a day.
No, I can't change it until after Handy's over
Pain
with.
relief? Try Salon Pause Deep Relieving Gel. 3 powerful medicines penetrate
There's
and
not
treat
how to
pain
do
for up
that.
to 8 hours. Need faster relief? Try
Let's
Salon
see.
Pause Jet Spray. Works on contact.
You gotta
Freezing pain,
change it.
fast. Salon Pause.
The Range Rover Velar.
All right, as we continue, Hannity from Singapore. Now, the final part of my interview with President Trump, where the president talked about the likelihood that Kim Jong-un would visit the White House or maybe Mar-a-Lago. Take a look.
Did reunification come up? Did humanitarian issues come up in the meeting?
Yes, it did, and one of the things I will tell you that I'm most happy about, and that, as you know, is a big sticking point, is bringing back the remains of thousands of soldiers that were killed.
This came up last minute. This wasn't.
This was sort of last minute, yeah. I said,
Yeah.
would it be possible? Because I get along the roadways, they were buried as, soldiers going back and forth into battle, and they